be killing me when you call people a goofy.
That's a Chicago thing. That's a Chicago thing. Shout out to Chicago. I got that from Chicago. That is a Chicago word. If you are called a goofy, that is like the worst insult. And I know, and I gotta say goofy because you cannot swear. This is like church without the pastor. They said, Kendra, don't say. I said, I had to ask. I said, is this a swear word? I said, the word that begins. Yeah. Oh, I said that means as much as your arm.
And you said as much as your arm. And he said, he said, this man is sitting on this live talking about what he wants when he's the opposite of that which he desires. And you just sit there and you be taking this information in. What do you be thinking? Because you meet a lot of delusional people.
And if you're talking about marriage, you shouldn't get a wedding or a ring until 5 years after marriage. And the reason why is because when you get engaged, it all becomes about the wedding and the dress and the bridesmaids. And, you know, you don't really focus on the real deal of marriage of, you know, are you now going to conform? Are you going to suppress your ambitions or your dreams for the greater good of the marriage? You're just focused on my wedding day and the announcement and the engagement. And, okay, we're wearing white. Okay, pink is the color. Yeah. None of that stuff matters really in marriage. Absolutely so not. You can know the soil if you're not focused on those things. You should earn a wedding day.
Saying is true based upon statistics. They say that marriage is on the decline, but they said that the generation, we people in the 20s, you know, 20-year-olds, I don't know what they call them, Gen, they all got different letters, but that generation is going to have healthier marriages because they have the tools. You know, they have all this relationship advice, books, podcasts where they can glean information from so they can have healthier relationships versus what you're talking about. We saw a lot of our elders have toxic marriages. They have a whole nother family living earners to be the providers, but how can we provide outside of finances? Not saying in lieu of, but saying, yes, go get your money, go do what you need to do, but don't make your value based upon your income. Right. And so what are you finding in yourself in these days? Let me ask you this. Do you desire marriage?
If I died tomorrow and I wasn't a wife, it wouldn't bother me.
Yeah, because you'd be dead. Yeah. So when people say stuff like that,
but let me tell you why. Because
bother you
because there's some people that are like, if I don't I would not be happy as just somebody's wife and having their kids. Like there's just so much inside of me. And I decided I'm going to pursue this career that has no guarantee. Like literally radio is probably one of the most unreliable careers you can bet on. Yeah, but it was like, I had to bet on me. And for a long time, I remember I used to be like, I chose my career over love. And the truth of the matter is I didn't choose my career over love. I chose who I am. Like, this is who I am, whether I was making $1 off it or not. This is who Kendra is.
So why you say it had to be a choice though? So what changed? What made it not work?
So what happened? Okay, I'm in radio. I ended up getting a job in Philly.
Oh,
so I got fired from this job in Chicago. So now I girl around all these sensational women. He ain't trying to be nobody's husband, child. But, you know,
I told her
that's my own theory.
I said she is not imaginary. She's a real person.
Yeah, everybody know but you. How everybody know your wife but you?
Because if we meet each other and it aligns and we say I do, then she became my wife. So she wouldn't be imaginary no more, would she?
Okay, this is your interview, so I'm going to respect that.
No, talk.
Okay, but I have a question for you.
We can have a conversation.
What?
Hey guys, welcome to Little Blackbird 91. Listen, I want to give this video on Kendra G, and obviously as well, dear future wifey. This conversation was an interesting conversation, right? And I got to where I wanted to get to by the end of it. Apologies, I missed the clip. But the important part of this was an interview for Kendra G. And what was interesting to see was how Kendra G handled the interview phase. And I felt like with Kendra G, during the course of this interview, she actually placed herself as the interviewer by the end of the show, right? So at the 37th minute is where it all changes. It's where it all goes different. It's where it all becomes flipped on its head in terms of power dynamics. Now, my thing about this situation with Kendra G is that she talks about her relationship that she was in, and talks about her father, how he also told her that she'll struggle in the marriage aspect because she is a career-driven orientated person, and she's somebody who has been in situations where the other party may not respect the ambition that she has or the goals that she has, and that makes relationships very, very difficult. And what I was witnessing with Kendra G, which I've noticed in coaching people over the last year or so, is that there's almost like this anxious disposition. And the anxious disposition, what I mean by that is that there's a need to almost kind of get to a place where she needs control of the dynamic between herself and the other party. Now, as you heard her just say, this is the interview, right? So she's meant to be interviewed. So she said she had one question. That one question now turned into a very long conversation about Latirius Whitfield. And hey, listen, you know what? On another day, let's question him. But this actually was for Kendra G to have her time to be asked questions about her. And what I find when people switch positions like this, they're uncomfortable with surrendering. And I think this is a really important aspect because she is obviously, and I believe that submission, as the Bible describes, it eloquently describes in Ephesians 5:21 that man and woman should submit to each other, but they submit in different ways. The man is supposed to love the woman and the woman is supposed to respect the man. These are two things that they have to surrender because they are very difficult to do for each person. The man struggles to love because he understands respect, but doesn't understand necessarily how to be loved. The woman understands love very well, but the respect part, the submission part, she finds difficult. So God instructs that both parties, instructs both parties to be able to be in a place where they can actually surrender to each other. It's actually one of the hardest things because for somebody like myself who's got more of an avoidant disposition, we value our hyper independence. We value it. We love being alone as much as we love, being amongst people. The difficulty is that when you get in a relationship, you're so used to having your way that when you're in a relationship, you still try to have your way. And that's what actually creates usually the tension between yourself and the other party. And so what I heard from Kendra G, or watched her in this particular live, in this particular breakdown, was the way she switched up the game. So we're going to talk a little bit about surrendering, about why that's important, how to surrender, and why I came to this position of saying that surrendering is important for anybody in a relationship, but we're talking about Kendra G and talking about women in general at this particular aspect as well. Okay, so when you can't surrender, it is about your hyper independence, which is something that's birthed through your experiences and what you were not giving as a child. I do believe there are women who are exceptions to the rule in terms of that they're so ambitious, they just don't want to have to surrender that. And there's nothing wrong with that, actually. It is about understanding that the relationship aspect still needs a surrendering that can be very difficult to do. And that I think that Kendra G has the same issue as those men that she described that are very powerful. Their struggle is giving up power. In a relationship, there is a giving up of power. The example of that is, imagine you are in an egg and spoon race and you're tied together. You know you're faster than your partner. You could outrun them if you didn't have them tied to you, but you're in a relationship, so they're tied to you. And so this is something that you can't run away from. And I think I spoke about this a couple of months ago, or a couple of years ago, actually, when I said I had an experience when I was on high ropes on the go ape situation. And I was with a young lady doing the go ape and I went well ahead of her. And I realized once I finished that first section, I had to wait for her. I had no choice. So there is a surrendering that both men and women do. You cannot, almost like outpace your partner to a point where you're not able to wait for them. You're going to have to wait for them. And so that surrendering is about you being in a space, being able to understand, being empathetic towards your partner, but also being empathetic to yourself in a relationship aspect. So sometimes our pride, kind of removes the protectional aspect. So we're going to break it down and hopefully give you guys some context as well, and hopefully help you as well in relationships. So if you know you're somebody who struggles with being able to surrender in a relationship, being able to compromise, being able to sacrifice is loose because we don't do too much of that, being able to quote unquote submit, then this will be a video for you. We'll really be able to break it down for you going forward as well. But let's play a bit more of the clip and then we'll talk a bit more.
Are you looking for? Because like most people don't have the opportunity that you have. You have the opportunity to associate with so many women, right? Which I really feel like is your disadvantage because we're having so many choices. It's like you're trying to make this perfect person. It's like, oh, I like her. She speaks well. Oh, but I like her because she's fine. Oh, I like her hair real. Oh, I like her. She go to church the most. So you got like 5 different pieces of a woman and you're trying to make it that one. So it's like, to me, I think your challenge is, focusing on one woman only and rocking out life with her when you have so many options. And I feel like that's the disadvantage. That's your challenge.
So
now, she actually has a point. I can't lie to you. Just a side note on that. She actually has a point. Talking about in terms of dating, for me personally, from what I've witnessed, when you start dating multiple people, I know we're having this culture now that's talking about dating multiple people a lot of now. Can I be honest with you? I think dating multiple people does not help. This is something that I learned years ago. Dating multiple people for me I've noticed that it doesn't help people. When I mean, and it depends on what you mean by dating. Again, everyone has a definition of dating. But in reality, having your energy split between people usually causes more carnage. I think what needs to be happening is actually what we call vetting. You need to vet these people either quickly and then move. And the vetting is actually not dating. The vetting is conversation, right? You should be able to assess people's mindset quite quickly. So I think when we say dating, for me personally, I'm saying that I think people should have more conversations. You don't have to date. You don't even have to go out. I think there should be a preliminary conversations that you guys are having. Almost like when you, like some people's business, you know, if you go into like therapy, they might do a pre-vet, right? Or a triad, as they would say, right? And we do that triad to make sure that you are suitable to even have this particular product or this particular advice, right? And so I think that we need to do more of that in dating. I think dating around with multiple people causes more carnage for yourself. So I actually do believe what Kendra G is saying here. But then she obviously advocates and says that women should date like men. So then I don't know what she was saying about Latirius, because in that respect, then why are you questioning whether he should date multiple women when you are advising women to date like men and date multiple people? I think we need to be more focused. I think people need to be more intentional. I think you need to focus on having more conversations, get to know what their mind is like, and then disqualifying them. If they don't match you in a mental capacity, they're not going to match you anywhere else. No matter how fine they are, they don't match you. And if you know your goals, your ambitions, you know your vision, you know where you're going, you know what you want, you know what you need, when you have a conversation with somebody, they can talk the first day and talk good first day. After a few conversations, you're going to realize they're not the one. You know what I'm saying to you? They're not the one. And so something I've just learned is that when you have multiple options, you tend to try and cherry pick, especially if you're somebody who gets options. Some of us, get options. So if you get options, that is always going to be an issue, because you're always going to have the cherry picking effect where you're like, I like a bit of them, I like a bit of them, I like a bit of them, a little bit of them, a little bit of them. And I was like, okay. I said, okay, I hear it, but you find yourself in more troubles in that space. So yes, I do believe that you can talk to multiple people. I think we don't date though. I think you need to be talking to them, like, have conversations and stuff. And move from there. Your intentionality is what's gonna change the game. Your intentionality is just gonna change the game. But like I said, everyone does things differently. People want to go out, do this, do that, and I'm like, all right, cool, that's on to you. I can't really say anything, but I said I'd advise people that you're wasting more time. Even going out I think for me is an issue. The reason why it's an issue is because people get caught up in the going out. You're getting dressed, you're getting excited, like someone's taking me out, you're doing your makeup, you're doing all this, you're getting so excited about being taken out, right? That actually sometimes the focus isn't on, are they chatting poop? Or, you know what I mean? Like we had a great date. Yeah, we did, but were you able to really analyze that person? Or were you caught up in the emotions of the night? Like that's what I'm trying to say to you. Like if you want to be really kind of checking people's mentals, like, but hey, that's not what we're here for. We're here for too much 100G situation, right? Okay. So there was I want to go a little bit later on, because I think Kendra G does talk a little bit later.
Came to a singles mixer, but yet still is single. Now, most women don't say they have 8,000 men to choose from, because then it's like, because then you're going to say, okay, if you got this many people to choose from, nobody was good enough, because then it becomes to, well, what are you looking for if you have all these options, so many, and like, okay, granted, we'll let's just say half, 4,000, they didn't fit you. Yep. Okay, then we'll go down, okay, 2,000. So now we got 1,000, good job, smell good, whatever, want to do, and still isn't it? So again, I'm not God. I never pretend to know it all. But I feel like men who say they want to be husbands, the challenge I said earlier is it's the buffet. It's like, okay, another thing can be coming. The marriages that I know that have lasted for a long time have gone through the hard times. It wasn't like some might be an outside child, but they're still married. Might have been infidelity or whatever the case may be, but they stayed married. It's like the Will and Jada is extreme, but in the extreme of it, they're still married, right? They're just the famous couple that we use because if I say Will and Jada, everybody says, but at the end of the day, guess what?
They're still married.
They're still married. And I feel like that's what's getting lost when people say they want what our grandparents had. They stayed married no matter what. And I don't feel as though our generation operates with that mindset. And the best thing to do is if you know that that's not you, then don't even enter into that covenant. Like, don't even play with it. If you know that if something outside of what really matters to you is more important, then don't assign your life to that person's life.
And so let me say this as we get ready to wrap up, because the interesting thing about this, and then God just revealed that to me, you're trying to assess me through the lens of, you're trying to assess me through the lens of the typical guy.
Let me ask you this question. Why does it matter to you? But I want to get this because we spend a lot of time here. Why does it?
Now pause. Do you see what happened here? This is really important. What happened here? And this is where we're going to start the video because it's a good example. Latirius, obviously, whether you agree with him, disagree with him, right? They're having a conversation, but they actually, remember, this is an interview. Okay. So in the interview, you're being interviewed. Now, the whole conversation, this is almost like it's an hour and 45 minutes in. Okay, it's an hour and 45 minutes in. We are still on Latirius Whitfield's dating. Latirius Whitfield is not the one this interview is not on him. It's on Kendra G. So from 37 minutes to the 1 hour 45 minutes, we're still talking about someone else. Now, if this was a date, what this would be what we call classic deflection, where the person, unfortunately, doesn't allow for you to see into them. Okay. And I think this is a really good example of seeing that the person doesn't want you to see into them because they're afraid of being able to be that vulnerable with you. And they've been in a position of power for so long. It can be very difficult to shed the skin of having to actually be able to relax and be in a position of surrender. She feels more comfortable being in a position where she's asking the questions, directing a conversation, because in that space, there is a level of power that comes from that place. But there's also a level of invulnerability. Now, the fear of vulnerability is that we're afraid that somebody will see us for who we actually are, but they're also afraid that actually if we allow them to see into us, they will see something that they may not like, or rather we will say something that will cause shame, embarrassment, or some level of guilt to ourselves. Okay, so when we are not in a place of surrender, it is always we're having to always be in control. Even in conversation, we interrupt or overtalk. We just saw that. We lead in the relationship, even when it's safe to be led. So this is a safe environment. She is friends with their future wifey. Why can't she relax and allow him to do his job? Well, because even if it's safe, it's not safe to be led. Right? Even if it's safe, she won't feel safe to be led. All right. Choosing independence over intimacy, right? And feeling unsafe in stillness or silence. So if you struggle with the silence, more than likely you have to fill up that space. Remember, I've said this before about sometimes people want to fill up the space. They don't like silence. That's the silence makes them start thinking about themselves and think about what actions they did or didn't take, or the actions that they felt about themselves. Okay. And that can happen too. Right? So it's all another part and parcel of this situation. And it can become very, very difficult at times to be able to relax because you feel like you're having to always fight for your position. You can't rest. You're always in motion, performance, and strategy. You're always in a place of movement. And it's because you don't know how to just be. Right? You don't know how to just be. So let's play a little bit more, and I'll talk a little bit more as well about this.
It matter to you so much what I think.
It don't. That's why I'm about to tell you. Why would I wrap up?
Okay. But you spend a lot of time challenging, convincing me.
Asking.
No, I was trying to move on, and you said
you kept asking.
Wait till y'all watch this. You're gonna watch this back. You're gonna see he go back to say, "Well, just what you said about me." Because in hindsight, this is what I always say. I'm not God. My opinion at the end of the day shouldn't even matter to you.
So hold on, Kendra. If the conversation was going, If the conversation is no longer, if you're saying the conversation, it kept on going because he decided to keep answering, she just showed us that she kept on answering. Okay. All right. So this is where Kendra doesn't see her issue, that actually she's not even becoming a safe space. Number one. Number two, also, she's not surrendering the power here. Number three, sis hasn't got the self-awareness to see that she is filling the space. So the conversation is continuing to go on now because she's actually pushing the conversation. He tried to explain himself and he could not explain himself all the way through. She didn't allow him to land. And that is what we are seeing. And so when you don't allow people to land and you're constantly always on the front foot, it's because you don't want the person to. It's not because you hate them. You don't hate them. It's because them landing, you already have a judgment about them. And the reason why the judgment has to continue forward is because the judgment keeps you safe. And this often shows us that you're unbalanced in your viewpoint. I always say this: people that are balanced are able to inquire, able to stay in a place of inquiry, much longer than they are to be in judgment. Many of us who have an insecure attachment, whether it's anxious, it is fearful avoidant, dismissive avoidant, stay in judgment longer than we do inquiry. Because what we've learned is we must make a judgment in order to feel safe. But when you are in a more healed state, a more secure attachment, you'll realize that actually you spend more time in asking questions. You want to know more about the person. You don't want to make a judgment before it's time. You don't want to be able to nail them to the cross, as to say, too early. You want to be able to have as much information before you make your conclusions. That's when you know you're healed. When you are, and listen, I'm also in that healing phase. I'm with you, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm with you. This is not we're not going to stand here and be like we're better than anybody. No. We are in our healing phase. I can tell you this for sure. But you know how sometimes you guys have sat, some of you have watched me for a long time. When you sit with me in an interview with somebody and we're sitting there for 2 hours, that is because I really value trying to understand that person. I have my judgment. Don't get it twisted. I do. And sometimes I get caught out. I get caught out because I reach in too soon. Right, but the 2 hours of that interview is because I want to give you as much space as possible to gather information. So when you sit on an interview with me for 2 hours, you are also training yourself to learn how not to jump too soon. You asking questions because we want to be in a space of being able to get more information before we make that final call. What Kendra is showing us is that she already made a final call. The curtains came down a long time ago. She just said, oh, you spent your whole entire time trying to prove to me. Now, she may be right. But what she's also showed is you've already made a judgment and you've not allowed the person to able to explore some of that perspective so they can share things. This was meant to be an interview for you, Kendra. It's now turned into an interview for Letirius.
That's why if you listen about what I'm about to wrap up, is the way you kept assessing me is based upon what you hear from other guys. I'm not those guys. I have kingdom purpose over my life as it relates to love and relationships and marriage. This platform has grown exponentially, not because I'm great at marketing, not because I did a marriage right and now I'm teaching people how to do marriage right. It's because I did marriage wrong and I laid my face at the altar and said, God, now teach me how to cause a revival in the world so that people can hear from you and be guided properly on how to love well and how to marry well. If you don't think that God has to fashion somebody, a suitable helper for me, knowing what I've been able to do in my single season and what God wants to do once I get married with my purpose partner that's going to 10x everything, has nothing to do with finances, has something to do with the work of the Lord in this earth, that God has fashioned a unique individual that will come alongside of me and we will blow this thing.
If you look at Kendra G's body language, she is literally fighting. And when I say fighting, it's the way she's holding herself. You can tell she's she wants to keep it in. She like, I'm going to keep it in. 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 And I think what Kendra struggles with is the ability to be able, to be able to hold it in about the situation. Now, like I said, she may be right about her assessment. I'm not saying that her assessment is wrong. I want to make it very clear. A lot of times when we talk about this, I validate a lot of people by saying, a lot of times with your insecure attachment, you may be actually right. But it's not the answer that's right that's going to make you right. It is the working out method. Without the right working out method, today you may be right, but tomorrow you'll be horribly wrong. So it's not the fact that you're right. It is okay to be right. It is the aspect of what is your working out method. If your working out method is judgment always, today you'll be right. Tomorrow you might be right. The next week you might be right. But you're going to get it horribly wrong one day because you're only judging and not being in the space of inquiry. So it's not that I'm not saying that she's wrong. She might have the right assessment. By the way, she says she is his friend. So she is seeing what she's seeing. So it doesn't matter what what we think or whatever. If she sees that, that's his friend. So maybe she's seeing something completely different. So I'm not going to question whether she's right or wrong. It's more the working out method. Is your method correct? Because if it's wrong, you're going to have a problem here, right? If it's wrong, you're going to have a problem here in the future. Not today, but in the future, because you're gonna get things wrong in a way that will cause more pain for somebody, right? So yeah. That's what I was putting out.
Up for the glory of the Lord. Has nothing to do with numbers. Has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do what the Lord wants to impart in this world through love, relationships, and marriage. So then when you ask the question, that's why we say, why do I care about what you say?
Look at the face. Look. She started smiling.
I really don't. I just love that this conversation can happen so that people who may have some of the same questions that you have, they get a chance to hear it straight from the horse's mouth.
Right.
So I allowed you to flip the interview on me because I said we can talk about it.
I wasn't trying to flip the interview.
You didn't try to, what you did, but listen.
Okay.
So what I'm simply saying is that I allowed you to ask those questions because of how rooted I am in my experience. The experience is Alvin Deer and his wife had Amber. They were on the podcast, and she said that God told her that basically when he does it for her, brings her husband, she's going to know that it was nobody but God that could have done it. When you look at the numbers, and you look at the numbers of whatever I have on social media and all that, I got 1.4 million followers across all platforms. Why he can't find a wife with that? Because God ain't said it's time yet. If I'm truly submitted to God, and I say, God, not my will, but let thy will be done. And then I'll have stuff with my own intentions to say, and I want to be married by the end of this year because as a man, I can decree and declare what I want. And then if it don't happen, I ain't gonna be like, well, God, you lied to me. God said you made up that timetable. But the reality is still letting people know I'm in the heart posture that I want to be. If you hear me stop saying I want to be married, then be worried because that means I'm for the streets. As long as you keep hearing me say I want to be married, that is my heart posture as a husband. So the reality is that I know what God says and I'm submitted to what God says, and I can only move when he tells me to move. It's people that I thought was my wife, people that I was like, this could be a great person. And I move with intentionality and it don't work out 2 or 3 months later. I don't cry about it. I say, okay, God, that wasn't the one. And it's not always motivated by me ending it.
But can I jump in? So I want to just say this.
Now, he may have a point. I see both sides, right? There is a point of aspect of sometimes, depending on what your calling is, you may have it a bit more difficult in terms of who you want to marry, right? It might take a little bit more time in terms of bringing that right person. I do understand that. But it may also be a case of that you may be wasting time. Now, when I say wasting time, like I said, when you're dating multiple people, you may also be wasting time. It can remove some of your intentionality. So I actually understand both perspectives here. One aspect is, yeah, it may be that God has actually said it's not your time. It's really not your time. But it also may be another aspect where it could be like you are also wasting time because you are putting yourself in situations where you know that person isn't for you. You know what I'm saying to you? It's why I'm not dating now. I don't date now. You know what I'm saying to you? Because like, if I haven't got the go ahead from God yet, I'm like, I don't want to waste my time. Although I'm gonna be cool with people. I think I understand that, and I'm cool with people, and I think that's a blessing. But I'm not. I know myself. Like I said, this aspect. There are many women out there, but if they don't inspire you to want to move the heavens and the earth, you're wasting your time. I've always said this. Like, I think men need to be actually more selective. I think if that woman doesn't make you feel like you want to move the heaven and the earth, why are we wasting? Don't waste that person's time. You know what I'm saying to you? Like, I don't care how bad you look, how good you look. You can look like a baddie, but if I don't feel it, I don't feel like I want to move the heaven and the earth. I don't. You know what I'm saying to you? Then maybe let's leave it alone. There's one that God can bring to do that. Do you know what I'm saying to you? But then at the same time, if we're dating multiple people, then that can also be wasting time, right? So I get it. And again, like I said, definition of dating is what's the issue I have here because we haven't defined what dating actually is. Are we talking or we're dating? Like, what does that mean? Right? We can have a lot of talking with a lot of different people, but are you dating? That's, you know what I mean? What depends what definition of dating is again, in that space.
thing I do want to correct. We have a friendship.
Absolutely.
So no, my assessment wasn't really off of other male experiences. It's about our experience. And one thing I said earlier, and I told you this earlier, like my friend QDZ, who's been married for 16 years, he said, if people are serious about marriage, they shouldn't talk about a ring or a wedding day until 5 years from now. So I say that to say a lot of women fantasize about the wedding day and the ring. And in our conversations, the things that you talk about when you talk about marriage, at the end of the year, I'm going to have a wedding. I'm going to have this ring. It's the symbols. But to me, those are just the shiny things that really don't have anything to do with marriage. And I would just challenge you, and I could be wrong, take those things out of the equation. It's not about the ring. It's not about the wedding date. Those are just the celebrations. It's about you finding that woman that you feel like, this is my life partner. I'm going to align myself with. Could you marry her without giving her a ring? Could you marry her without having a big celebration that people on YouTube get to wait, hold on, let me finish, get to watch. Now, when people start talking like that, then I feel like, yeah, they're really talking about marriage. They're not talking about the symbols of marriage. And I feel like, if I can speak in this moment, you talk a lot about the symbols of marriage, because you go to the end of the year, we having this wedding day. That doesn't matter.
I did not say get married. See, your ear is trained to hear something that's not
You told me you were getting a wedding.
What they got to do with the marriage?
That's the celebration.
In this whole conversation, because you want me to base my life on what QDZ said. I don't lie with what he said.
I'm not saying
that.
Whoever QDZ is, he's in trouble. Whoever QDZ is, listen, he done got into trouble because Kendra G done pulled his name into the situation about QDZ. Okay, so I think it's really important. Again, this conversation is interesting because it's not. The reason when I watched it, I said it's interesting because this isn't a conversation. It's an interview, right? It's not a conversation. It's meant to be an interview, but it's turned into a conversation now about about marriage and about whether people are doing it right. And it's interesting because I think I'm not going to choose anybody's side. Actually, I'm going to say that if anybody's calling out anybody, they're both in the same position. You know what I mean? They're both in the same position. You get what I'm saying to you? So it's like, I get that Kendra G said about him, maybe not being as serious, but they're in the same position. Kendra, you. I'm sure there's a lot of people that can approach you that would want you, but you also are not also able to find the right kind of person because you have to take your time with it. It's like both of you are in the same position. But this conversation is a bit odd because I guess I didn't expect it to be on the panel. I didn't expect it to be a conversation on this live. This is a conversation that happens behind the scenes. And we have been gifted the conversation on this video. And this was not the purpose of the conversation. The purpose of the conversation was to be about Kendra G and her situation. Now, the purpose of the conversation now is about the future wife who's dating. So actually we don't get, so then I'm thinking to myself, okay, Kendra, if we now get into a dating situation, will the conversation flip? You know what I'm saying to you? Will the conversation flip? If I'm dating Kendra, will it get to a place where Kendra can't be as vulnerable and accept certain things without flipping it onto me? You know what I mean? Without turning it onto me.
Oh, but you're saying the fact that I want to have the fact that I desire a wedding is improper.
Are we arguing?
Yes. So the reality is this. So in the whole conversation, nothing I ever said about a ring, nothing I ever said about a wedding.
You did talk about a ring.
No, I did not say that.
Okay.
You said that.
Okay.
I talked about purpose, kingdom work. That's what I'm saying. Your ear is trained to hear something I'm not saying. Nowhere.
We also have a friendship too, and there's things that we've talked about outside of it.
But even outside that, I don't care about no ring and that stuff. I'm talking about everything.
You've never bought a ring?
Yes, I ain't bought no ring.
Okay.
I ain't never bought no ring for nobody. That's because earlier in the interview you said, and this ring that you have, girl, I just thought you was joking. I was like, I ain't bought no ring for nobody.
Okay.
Because and that's another reason I would never go pre-purchase a ring for somebody.
Okay.
Because that means I'm not even getting her weigh in on what type of diamond cut that she wants and all that. She has I didn't just go lay out our life without her permission. I'm not goofy like that. Chicago word. So the reality is, like, she gets to pick whatever ring she wants. She gets to determine how the wedding. I don't care about all that stuff. What I'm talking about is purpose, the vision. Nothing in this letters, I've written over 200 letters, talks about materialistic stuff. Not one time. Everything is about purpose. Matter of fact, you didn't even hear the letter, what you talked about. I was writing the letter.
To his invisible wife.
To this invisible wife, you said, listen to this. Dear future.
Not her saying about the aspect of an invisible wife. Now, so yeah, the conversation's turned because I guess I can see that Latoris can be a little bit. I can see that Latoris has been a little bit defensive. I think he feels a little bit, like challenged in that space, right? And I know he probably feels a little bit like that he's being almost called out, right? And I get it. You know what I'm saying to you? It's happened to me several times. You guys have seen me on interviews where someone calls me out. You know what I'm saying to you? And it's like, whoa, you know what I mean? Like I said, if you're meant to be my friend, calling me out like this, I'll probably be a little bit defensive too. You know what I'm saying to you? I'll be probably a little bit defensive too, because we're meant to be friends. This is not the time to call me out. You call me out behind the scenes if you're gonna call me out. You know what I'm saying to you? If you think I'm doing something wrong, this is your interview. This is your time. Why has it flipped onto me? But again, let me go back onto my surrender points, because I don't want to repeat the same points. I already said this already. Okay, so surrendering. Surrendering is not a weakness. It is spiritual and emotional alignment with trust and peace. Okay, all right. It is about being able to find yourself in a place where you're able to accept that you don't have to be in control. So when you're surrendering, it's important because it creates emotional safety for both partners. We just witnessed this conversation, which it probably wasn't like a bad conversation. Let me be honest with you. They're probably going to laugh about this behind the scenes. But for us who watching it without having the context of knowing that, it does look like this might not be a safe conversation, right? It does look like that. Doesn't mean it is. It looks like that from outside. So for anybody out there, when you're able to rest, especially, and I say this for the ladies because I'm talking about Kendra G, when you're able to rest in your feminine energy, right? It invites a man to be more masculine and able to have that dance and polarity. I've said this several times before. When a woman's able to rest and not try to overreach, and not try to control, and not try to dictate, it allows the man to be able to move the relationship in the right way. Also, it gives you time to observe. When a woman's able to actually surrender and play an observatory role, she's actually able to observe. And actually, she can actually spot if this man really is a man for her. Like I said, if he would if he really wanted to. You know what I'm saying to you? So when you're able to surrender to a place where you're able to relax, you can actually see that person in better light than trying to be on the front foot, trying to guide it. Take your foot off it. Surrender. You know what I mean? You will find that you're able to see them for who they really are. This also allows for intimacy to flow, right? Because whenever we're trying to control something, it blocks the connection. It doesn't allow for the woman to be soft, to be nurturing, to be vulnerable. Like where Kendra G is now, we're not seeing that softness. We're not seeing the vulnerability. We're not seeing the ability to allow it to flow. What we're seeing is a constriction of a conversation. And they had to ask the question, are we now even arguing? And the reason being is because we're not surrendering, right? We're not surrendering in this conversation. Number 3, this also allows for the doors of trust to open and for the bridge of trust to be built. You know, you are going to struggle to trust somebody who's trying to control you and manage you, but also somebody who's unwilling to surrender, right? Like Kendra G told us in her video as well that in a situation with her kind of when her dad told her when she was younger, she spoke about how they both had a life plan and nobody wanted to surrender. So now they had to quit the relationship. So in reality, what needs to happen is understanding that in order for trust to be built, we have to surrender. Now, this conversation that we're seeing in front of us is something that should have been done behind the scenes, not right in front of us. And so surrendering is a fruit of healed discernment. I love that word. Surrendering is a fruit of healed discernment. The reason why people don't surrender is because oftentimes we are not healed enough to be able to feel comfortable enough to surrender. We are scared that if we trust you or trust them with our surrendership, our submittance, they will do us dirty. So instead, we try to stay in a place of control, which is what I was describing with Kendra G and how she's handled this situation of this conversation. It's been in a place of where Kendra G could have called him out, but do it behind the scenes. But even behind the scenes, forget that. This thing here, she had the bait between her teeth. She had the bit between her teeth. So once she had a bit between her teeth, instead of just saying, okay, cool, you know what? You've answered the question. Maybe you're not going to answer it the way I wanted to answer it, but let's leave it. Let's get back on track. Because the conversation is about me. So let's get back on track. Because that didn't happen, because Kendra G doesn't want to surrender per se in all aspects, because there is parts of her life she is surrendered. Because she didn't want to surrender in this conversation, it actually went on longer than it needed to. We're at the 35th minute mark, going on to 2 hours. That's an hour and a half of no surrendering that has led us to a place where this conversation now is no longer about being about her. It's now about Atirius. And now he's become defensive. And we have to be honest, he's defensive, right? And he's defensive because now he doesn't feel like she surrendered. But now also at the same time, what does he have to do in that moment? So when that person doesn't surrender, what do we have to do in that moment? Okay? So now I'm not safe. I'm not feeling cool. What do I have to do? Surrender. Yeah, surrender. If Laturius also has surrendered, this conversation doesn't go where it goes. And sometimes surrender doesn't mean like we stop the conversation. Sometimes surrendering also means tone. It means, kind of coming back to the conversation. Like you guys got to see if you were here, myself, Sean, Seaway, we had a very intense conversation about Carla again, right? In our last conversation. And at first, I don't think either of us were relenting. We all had our opinion. Myself, Sean, Seaway, we all had our opinion, and we were not relenting. It gets to a place, and we go, okay, look, we've been speaking for an hour and a bit. Let's relent because we're not getting where we need to get to. You know what I'm saying to you? We've got to a place of understanding, but I'm saying to you, maybe had we all surrendered earlier, maybe that conversation doesn't go on for an hour and a bit. Do you know what I'm saying to you? So it's about surrendering. And sometimes it's hard to surrender because sometimes you got to take a loss. And that loss is painful, right? Sometimes that loss is painful. Sometimes we're like, I don't want to give up that loss. And that's where the difficulty is. So like in a relationship aspect, the reason why I'm saying this is because we just witnessed two friends go at it. But it's a good example of what happens in relationships when two people don't want to relent. You know what I'm saying to you? Now, as a person, you might say, if I relent now, Kendra G is going to keep on running over me. Well, actually, relenting does not mean I don't have boundaries. What I can do is I can relent for now, and then I can have a conversation with you later on. Hey, the way we just spoke earlier on, there were certain things that were happening that I didn't feel like were conducive to us having a really good relationship. And that's that's the hard part. Like it's not easy. Like I'll be honest with you, it is not easy. It's not easy.
Your wifey, this is a year we finally cross paths, not just in passing, not just as acquaintances, but as two souls ready to walk in divine alignment. I can feel it in my spirit. Every lesson I've learned, every moment of waiting, every test of faith has been preparing me for you, and you, my love, have been preparing for me. I don't know exactly when or how it will happen, but I know that when our eyes meet with true intention, something will shift. The weight of past heartbreaks will feel lighter. The doubts will dissolve, and the deep knowing, the kind that only God can place in our hearts, will settle in. I've been intentional about becoming the man of God, the man God called me to be, a husband, worthy of the love I've prayed for. And I trust that you have been on your own journey of becoming the woman I've us together. And so that's what I'm trying to fashion your ear, that when you hear me speak about my future wifey, is not some imaginary person. This is a woman that God has been fashioning since the beginning of time that will converge. We will have a Kairos moment. A Kairos moment is a God-ordained moment where it happens. And she and I will meet in this Kairos moment where we do purpose together and cause great impact across this world.
So two things, and I said this earlier. And you just said it. You said you're trying to fashion my ear. You don't got to fashion my ear.
No, I'm talking about as a friend, though, because if you keep speaking about me as a friend as improper, that means you're not listening.
Well, no, what I'm saying is I can have my...
Now, this is a really important point. The argument we're having right now, or sorry, I didn't say argument, disagreement. I think we'll say disagreement here is that, as she just said there, you don't need to fashion my ear, she said, right? But I don't think she realized in that perspective that once you call someone a friend, there's conversations that there's a level you don't want to go to, right? Because nobody wants to be misunderstood when you're in your friendship. So again, I'm watching this from a relationship perspective as well, which is like, okay, so Kendra, if you're in a relationship, the person will want your understanding. We have been speaking for an hour and a half because we have not got to a place of understanding. That's why the conversation's gone on for so long. Because rather than relenting and saying, do you know what, maybe I don't fully understand it, and I don't fully get it, that's where we leave it at. We've been going back and forth because we're feeling like we're not understanding each other. So that's why that's really important, again, about going back to that surrender perspective, surrendering so that you can actually begin to understand, because sometimes we don't understand because we think our point has to land to a place that we're right, rather than being landing our point to be understood. Like, do you understand what I'm saying? If you understand, then it doesn't have to, I don't have to win, but I'm appreciative of your understanding. You may not fully say you're on my side, that's fine, but you understood.
My assessment, and my assessment can be wrong because it doesn't matter to your reality, right? So you don't have to read a letter. You don't have to convince Kendra G of anything because you're like,
it's just giving more information. So for instance, if you're saying I've had conversations with you and you talk about a ring, well, I say I never talked about that.
Now he didn't. He needs to let her land as well, because that, now you see, he needs to let her land. When she finishes, then he can respond. But he didn't let her land.
You talking about? That means you're misrepresenting what you've heard me
that
say.
could be true, but at the end of the day, here's the deal. I don't work hard to convince anybody to see my vision on what I know for me, right? Let me get this out. There's people who think they know me so well. I don't care because guess what? I know me, right? So your assessment is your assessment. At the end of the day, I'm the one that wakes up and goes to bed with Kendra G. So what I would say what matters most to me is our friendship. So if I said anything that you felt disrespected,
you're just okay.
So
I want to make sure stuff like this.
Okay,
I told you I like this.
Okay, yes. I want to make sure that that's what matters most to me. I do still stand on certain beliefs, but guess what? It doesn't matter.
Of course,
nothing that I think
this
does
is an
matter.
interview. That's the reason why. Right. You ain't somebody that's in my DMs that I can ignore. We're having that conversation.
And you also said that you've heard what I said before.
I've heard women say he don't want nobody. I'll be like, wait, like. Don't believe me, just watch. It's the reality. It's like you can feel whatever you feel.
Well, listen, I told you, I already listen, girlfriend, I already told you. Well, I'm ready. If y'all ain't ready, I'm ready. I'm on a water diet. I'm going to look good. You know, I got the makeup artist. We is ready for this.
So, Kendra, yes. You ain't got all out the whole interview about yourself. So, information about you. Okay. You saying that, were you on the spectrum when it comes to marriage?
I believe my happiness and my spiritual well-being trumps everything, right? So again, I don't play with marriage. I do take it serious. So because I don't play with it, I have to meet a person where all things align. Marriage is very individual. Now, the 20-year-old Kendra I was talking about before, this is a whole different Kendra. I can't not think about marriage without thinking about business. It's just my reality, right? It's just impossible. I run a company, you know, so there's so many things.
So we think about marriage and business. Go ahead and sum it up so we can wrap up. You say I cannot think about marriage without thinking about business.
Here's the reality. I don't wake up this is where we differ. Marriage, if I don't get married, I'm okay with that. Like, it's like my relationship status is not my worth, right? My worth is how do I show up? How do I show up in this world? Am I a good person? Am I happy? I don't want to go deep, but I watched my mother die. And when my mother died, that really taught me the essence of death. Now, I done lost jobs. I've been broken up with. I done got through it all. But when my mother died and watched her take her last breath, that was the bullet that got through the bulletproof vest that God gave me. And I was suicidal. I did not want to live. I never thought I would laugh again. I thought being happy would be an insult to my mother to learn how to live life without her. And
So I'm interrupting it on purposely. I think this is where we needed Kendra G an hour and a half ago. So this is the armor. What we have an hour and a half armor. Now, the reason why I'm able to really understand what the armor is because I have my own. See, as somebody who, and I started, somebody called me out on this a couple of years ago. A girl called me out on this a couple of years ago. She's like, sometimes when you're talking to me, it feels like you are either coaching or you're doing therapy, right? Rather than really getting to know me. And it's because I didn't realize that part of my armor is to be in a space of control. My control is I'm trying to ask you questions to understand you, yes, but I'm therapizing the conversation. So whilst I'm asking questions of the why, what I'm missing is the aspect of really connecting with that person. So connectivity also means being able to be receptive to giving and taking and sharing. So being able to also emotionally be available means I can give and I can take. But I was only giving and not necessarily taking. And I've heard this from other ladies, you know, when I was younger, but not to say younger, but, you know, a couple of years ago. And they were like, you know so much about me, coach, but I don't know nothing about you. And that's the way I like it. You know what I mean? That's what you should say. And that's the way I like it. And the reason why is because it gave me a sense of control, but it also gave me a sense of safety. It was safe to be in a space where I could therapize, I could counsel, and I could ask a question where it was about coaching you almost in a sense, right? rather than connecting with you. And that's why I'm so good at what I do. I'm going to be honest. I'm to my own horn. I think I'm really good at it. But that's also that's also a downfall, because you get so trained in that area, because it is a gift, but it's also a part of your trauma. And that's when you realize you have to do work, when the gift is actually coming from your trauma and you cannot indistinguish the two. Ooh, that's a word. Let me put that there. Oh, gee, hallelujah, Father, come on, preach to somebody. But no, for real. I'm really deep in it as I'm just speaking now, as coming out and processing it. That is a massive thing, because especially those of us who are in the healing space, the trauma and the gift have collided. And when you get into relationship, the difficulty is being able to separate the two worlds. When you struggle to separate the two worlds, you know you're unbalanced. You know you're unbalanced. If you know you're connecting with people always on a deep level, but you're deep in the sense of you're having to therapize, coach, you're trying to pull something out of them per se, rather than actually having just conversation, we're connecting, right? Like we're exchanging ideas, we're exchanging experiences, then you are missing it. You're still guarding yourself in that space. So that's a really important thing as well, like to be able to do that, like disconnecting the gift and the trauma, and being able to operate from a space of just a real heart posture, like a real heart space,
And I remember I was like, God, if I'm going to stay here on this planet, life got to be great. He's like, say less. And as time has progressed, I knew that me living was important for my mother. She didn't want me to be on this planet soaking. So I say this to say, I'm not going to waste the day in sorrow because I'm not married, because I'm not a mother. Today might be my last day. I like to make it to the end of the week, but there's no guarantee. So every moment I'm in, this is why you see Kendra happy. This is why you see her living a full life, because I know the opposite, which is death. So the difference for me is that's not what I think about every day. What I think about is am I in a spiritual well-being moment? Because I could be married. I can be married. Would I be happy? I don't know. I don't think so, actually. I don't think I've been. And these are wealthy men. Because people say, oh, you can't marry the man you want. No, I can marry the man you want, because all y'all focus on is money, aesthetics. I could be married to that. I could have the man of your dreams, girlfriend.
I can have a man of your
Because he's
dreams.
the man of your dreams. He's not the man of mine, because I know the reality of what comes along with that. And I'm not going to be somebody's wife just to say I have a husband and I'm crying at night because I'm not being fed spiritually.
Absolutely.
Or I'm crying at night because my husband might be doing something he shouldn't be doing, but I signed up for it. Because if I decide to marry a person as who they are, I got to put on my big girl pants and said, that's the deal I made. And I'm not going to make that deal just to appease the world. I'm never going to get married for a business plan, because everyone's like, if I was a gimmick, like the reason I'm successful is because I'm not a gimmick. I really have a passion of connecting people. I sit on a side where I talk to people like Lateris, who, we put.
So do you know what's really interesting about this conversation and what she's saying? Everything that she laid at dear future wifey's feet is essentially what she does. Everything she laid at his feet about him not finding the right wife, him not, writing letters, Sis, you have access to men too, very rich men, and you just said it. I could have the man of your dreams. So see, the energy that she had for him was really for herself. These are two mirrors. You know what I'm saying to you? They're just two mirrors who are just reflecting each other in that space. So if now you are telling us that you don't want to just get married just for sake of getting married, why did you not have the grace for him? Because you didn't have the grace for yourself. Do you get what I'm saying to you? Like if you're so hot on something, like for instance, I've been in Egypt. So me, I don't get hot on people that are fornicating, because I've been a fornicator. So I try to understand where you're coming from. Like, you know what, bro, I can really get where you're coming from. I try to step to your side rather than step to your face, because I know where you're coming from. But when you are doing the exact same thing and you have heat for that person, the heat isn't for them, it's for you. You are seeing them and you are projecting you onto them. And that's why the heat's coming, right? It really is for you. Because like I said, if you really honestly deep it, if you really have been through something, you tend to have an empathy for that person, because you're like, oh, I've been through it, so I know how it feels. Like, I know the feelings, I know the thoughts you have in that moment. Sis just told us she ain't you know, she ain't trying to get married to just anybody. Okay. Did he not say the same thing? Okay.
put you on a pedestal, and everybody should be put on a pedestal, but maybe somebody that's not as educated or as successful or knows the Bible as well. I ain't gonna never, now don't ever challenge in the Bible, child. You not gonna win. So, so I ain't even gonna do that. But with a person, I know the world is very different. So for me and my own personal walk, if I'm open-minded to it, but if it doesn't happen, it's okay. Like no love lost.
Your mom passed away what year? March 29th.
My mother passed away 2012. So what are we, 2025? So it's 13 years.
13 years.
And it really changed me, because I remember I have an uncle, and I was really gone. Like when my mother died, and I'm not even like, if you ever lost someone that you love so much, you know, only thing I will say, God was so gracious that me and my sisters got to be around her when she took her last breath. So I got to see like, oh, this is what we really are, spirit and a body. Like we're really not body, we're really spirit in a body. Because I watch, you know, if you ever watch death, you know, it's a long, it's a long breath. It's like two long breaths, and then it's like one long breath. And then
release of the spirit.
It's a release of the spirit. So watching that, it was like, wow. And my mother is like she was my girl. That was my favorite human. I don't think I've ever loved a person as much as I loved my mother. And
so I think this again, I want to highlight something. As she speaks about her mother, you can see the emotions starting to well up. That strength that she has suddenly starts to dissipate. And I'm not saying you have to start to, please, I'm not saying that you should start talking about your traumas as to be soft. No. What I'm saying is that the whole span of this conversation, this is probably the first time I've seen her soften up a little bit. You know what I'm saying, Chu? This is the first time I've really seen her still like soften up a little bit. This thing is hitting her. It hits. And the struggle with that also is that that you know, as she's sharing this, you can see the going through the emotions of feelings that she's having in that moment, the pain that she's experiencing, and that's a real thing. That's a real thing. The eyes about to well up. Like this is 13 years ago. No one's saying get over it. By the way, I'm just saying like it's still. And again, we can get stuck in the grieving process because there are things that maybe we don't want to see, we don't want to deal with, we don't want to go. You know what I mean? It can be very heavy.
I don't want to get teary-eyed.
No, you're good.
But it just taught me, it's everything of who I am, because I think people are like, Kendra, you live this loud life. It's like, yeah, because I know one day it's not going to be here. You know, I really do live. I try to anyways. Like today is my last. So if I have to go to Jesus this weekend, I'm empty. And when you look back on the reel, you'll be like, she had a good time that weekend. And this is why you can't wait till your wedding day to have a good time. You got to have a good time right now, because right now is the only time that's promised. Period. The end. So when people try to give you your worth can't be based on your relationship status. It can't be related based on your career status. It just got to be based on your human status. Can you breathe? Can you inhale? Can you exhale? Find a way to be happy, whatever the dynamic of your life is. And with that being said, wife, Latiris.
Don't flip it back on me.
Hurry up, girl.
No, flip it back on me. But thank you for your vulnerability in that. Rihanna, where we at? 2 hours?
We're at 2 hours? We
2
did?
hours and what?
Oh my God, we went for 2 hours and 5 seconds. I made it to the 2 hour category.
You made 2 hour category.
Are you going to edit me down?
I ain't going to edit
okay,
down.
Okay, but I thought Latiris, I'm so happy. I was getting nervous. I said, he about to call his sister to beat me up, child. I was like, please, brother Latiris, I take it all back.
No, listen. No, I do like that. That's the whole point. Now, I wanted to get more about your personal life, but you already told me that, you know, certain stuff you don't want to talk about.
Well, I would just say, as in my personal life, the overall blanket is I'm enjoying myself. Like, exactly. You know, I'm a single woman.
And I think that's the issue. That's her issue right there. There it is. I listen, she may say it's not for TV. That's why she doesn't want to say anything. She doesn't want to give people ammunition, etc. But I think that's her issue. I think that's her issue because we dodged it and see, we completely dodged it for an hour and a half. I think there's a lot more work Kendra probably needs to do in terms of releasing the weight she's carrying. I think there's I think there's a weight that she's carrying that needs to be released. I feel like she's carrying a lot under the load, and she's very protective of that load, which I understand. But it's also something that probably prevents her from being able to really be in a relationship the way she needs to be, because there's so much that you're burdened by. You know what I'm saying to you? Like as you just said there, like, you know, hey, there was things you don't want to talk about, which I get. You know, there's things that you don't want to talk about. So now what's going to happen is, she, instead of talking about it, look what she did. She flipped the whole interview on its head. She made sure that the interview was not going to go deep and completely flipped on its head. That is somebody who's going to be uncomfortable with vulnerability. You're going to have to be breaking down hatchets and breaking down walls to get to a place of the vulnerable Kendra G. Do you know what the biggest issue with that is? Is that people who usually have a guard up usually date other people who have a guard up. Like I always say, the only people trying to jump over the highest walls are criminals and dogs. So whenever you have a high wall and a high guard, yeah, it might protect you, but the moment you want to be open, now you realize that you're actually investing in the wrong people, which is going to confirmationally bias. It's going to be confirmationally biased towards the experience, and probably, if it's a bad experience, it's going to be like, see, this is why I don't open up. See, this is why I don't get emotional. But really and truly, what you don't realize is you have caused your own issues by actually not practicing vulnerability. You didn't realize that you should have been in a place of observing how people move, and not every person needs your investment. But if you have your guard up, you never come out. It can be very hard because you never release yourself. You get what I'm saying to you? You never put yourself in a place of just observing, from a place of inquiry rather than judgment. So I know it's not easy what Kendra just shared there, and it's very painful what she has gone through. I think there's a little bit more work that she needs to do in terms of that aspect, so that she can actually begin to invite what she really needs energetically correctly, because it's an energy. If you're not really comfortable being vulnerable, it's an energy. You'll meet other people who are like that. Or you meet other people who just take from you, because you maybe, you know what I mean? Like sometimes we date people because they have what we want, maybe they're more free, but as they're more free, you're going to be more constricting them because you haven't done that work, right? Or we date people that are very much like ourselves. We're guarded, they're guarded. Either way, there's usually there's usually a result that we don't necessarily want. I get it though. I feel for her. But listen, my time is up. My hour's up. I said I'm going to do only an hour as well. So I appreciate you. We're gonna do some work tomorrow, and we're gonna break some stuff down as well. All right. So make sure you guys like, share, subscribe. We'll be back here tomorrow with another interview with Bree TSC. She's talking with Paul Brunson. I can't wait to break that one down because that one's all about attachment styles. That one's heavy. I cannot wait. I can't lie to you. So I appreciate you guys. We'll be back tomorrow for another live as well. Appreciate you. Much love.